Pew, pew, pew. Okay, oops, why is it like that? I have my whole screen selected for some reason. I feel very old. Um, yeah, hello, people. I decided to do this as a live because I'm getting really irritated with doing short form content. I find it cannot capture the nuance of what actual discussion needs to have. And then I also don't want to edit long form content. So that's why I'm doing this live. I think it'd be doing this situation a disservice to not to try to capture it in 3 minutes because it's just not happening. And also people don't often watch to the end, which they probably won't with the live anyways. Um, but for people who aren't aware of the situation, I'll explain it, but I'll I guess it's 1 minute early that I've started this. But yeah, anyways, the reason I'm doing this live is because I don't want to edit long form content. I don't think that this can really be talked about with the nuance that is needed in short form content. And I wasn't going to comment on it because my friend Ellie was doing a really good job of covering this, and she actually lives in the UK and knows UK law. And I've just been supporting her on her videos because I think she's done a wonderful job. However, I was brought up and attempted to be used as an example to justify Raleigh's behavior towards this child that she has been bullying for the last several days. And I have a big problem with it. And I think that it also just exposes a major hole in her own self awareness. And I'm going to read you the post that she attempted to use as an example. And then I welcome you to go watch literally any of her content and tell me if the tone sounds the same. But first, I'll describe the situation. There's a kid that is like about 17, so she's technically turning 18 soon, which is what was used to justify the treatment of her. Personally, for me, I still view 18-year-olds as children. I don't care if technically by legal definition they magically become an adult. Then look at pictures of yourself at 18. You're a fucking child. Look at your behavior at 18. You're a child. You are still in high school. You are not an adult person. You do not think like an adult. And one thing that I really want to stress is that kids that are that age are still living with their parents typically. They are still financially managed by their parents to some extent. And they do not have all of the choices that an adult person making all of their own decisions and financially managing their whole life would have. And that is incredibly important. So this kid is 17 and she lives in the UK, and she's been posting videos of her horse that is tethered. So has like a collar around the neck and a lead shank, and then they they take one of those screwy things to put it deep into the ground, and then the horse is tied to that, can move around the grass grazing, but is tied up, and was allegedly doing that for about half the day. And the horse is also alone. So it's not an ideal situation. Okay. However, it is not illegal. If you look up UK laws, it is not illegal. In Raleigh's response video to this, she claims that it is illegal, and she said she's going to find out where this girl lives and report her. But very quick Google search will show you that it is not illegal. And now, I don't subscribe to the idea that legality is more like creates morality, because there are a lot of things that are illegal that aren't like technically stealing when you're starving is illegal. But I don't view that as a problem, because I think it's morally wrong that people are starving while other people have way too much. So legality does not equate to morality, and it's not an ideal situation. But I think the key thing here is that she chose to publicly go after a child without making any attempt to message her or contact her first, or consider contacting the parents, because realistically, the people who are at fault here, if you're going to try to lay blame, are the parents, because they are the ones managing the child's choices and their lifestyle. So this is not the fault of a child, because she is very, very likely living at home and being managed by her parents to at least some extent. And to go after the kid and not look at the parents and how they contribute to the equation and the other adult role models in her life is just really missing the mark. And it's holding a child to a degree of accountability that Raleigh can't even hold herself to. And she's continued to double down. And if you go look at this child's account, she's getting reamed out in the comments by a lot of people. She has a lot of people also supporting her. She's made a wish list, and someone has generously bought her a solar fence charger, and she's going to be setting up an electric fence pen for the horse, which is fantastic. So she is making choices and making adjustments that are great. And if you look at her recent videos, how she expresses her ideas and her thoughts is very mature. And she comes across more emotionally grounded and mature than Raleigh does herself. I will say that in some of her first response videos, she was responding in a pretty defensive way where she was like mocking Raleigh and kind of feeding into the drama. But this is a 17-year-old child, and she is being bullied by a grown woman with a 500,000 subscriber following, right? So being defensive and responding that way is not something that we're going to take issue with, because why wouldn't you? Ellie's video that she did on this whole situation that Raleigh ultimately responded to, and that's when she brought me into the situation. Ellie did a video saying that if something happens to this girl where she harms herself because of mental health problems, you are complicit, like you are at fault for this. And she said that to Raleigh. And then Raleigh responded and was pretty pissed about that and was basically saying, like, I take no accountability for this. Like, it's not my fault what she does. And like, I can't control what my followers say, and blah, 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 blah. And the reason why I wanted to do this as a live is because there's a lot of nuance in the situation. Technically, what she is saying can be correct in certain situations. However, we need to look at the context, because the context of Raleigh's following is that this is not a one-off occurrence. She has repeatedly had her following go after people relentlessly for days, weeks, months at a time. More than, like, even just within the last year, many, many times. It's been a lot of people, and they go after her with patterned behaviors that show personal attacks, oftentimes threats, derogatory remarks, degrading people, attacking, being malicious, attacking the person rather than the problem, labeling them as a bad person, making all-encompassing statements that serve to slate someone as being good or bad, and looking at things in very black and white way. Let's even reflect back to the video she made about me. It got taken down in Canada because I reported it for defamation, and under Canadian defamation law, it was defamatory because she was saying things about me that were untrue. She brought up issues with me from about a decade ago that she clearly still harbors animosity towards, despite the fact that we'd had prior conversations and we were on good terms. But she was upset with me criticizing her. And I'll also go over my behavior with the video that I made, because I could have made it less inflammatory than I did, and I will acknowledge that. However, it still doesn't justify her response. So she calls me a grifter. She says that I'm a bad person, both in the thumbnail of the video. So even if you don't watch the video, in big block letters, Shelby is a bad person. And actually, I think it says my first and last name. So this is also why it ended up being defamatory. She uses my photo. She names me by my first and last name. She calls me a grifter. And then the whole video is just like mean-spirited, mean girl energy, personally attacking me, barely at all touching on the actual argument that I was making, which, again, that's not a discussion. That's literally just being a bully. If you look up the definition of being a bully, it is taking these personal attacks and just dragging people and being relentless, lacking compassion, and being mean. Whereas if you look at my video, I did say that she was a fake activist, and that is where I can say that was inflammatory. I could have toned that down and been less direct, and that is a situation where I said that because I do personally believe that, because she lacks so much compassion for people. But I did say that knowing it was going to be inflammatory, and it was a situation where it's like, yeah, that's more of a clickbait title. So I could have toned it down, but personally, I don't feel bad about doing that, because I think that she should be able to handle criticism with how much she dishes out, and she should be able to handle it better than this. And I also think that personally, I've afforded her way more compassion than she has given to me. And I empathize with the fact that with how she is behaving, she has got to be going through something. Like, you don't behave this way when you are happy, regulated, and well-grounded. And I don't want to make any statements about what's going on in her life, but I'm just saying that based off of how she is behaving online, that like we should just assume that she's dealing with things that are difficult. And that doesn't justify her behavior, though. So that's the other thing that I want to add is, like, if you're having that hard of a time emotionally regulating, that's where you start to go, maybe I need to remove myself from these situations. And I also want to note that, like, the video she made about me was back in September, which is like about 8 months ago. I'm still getting messages that are like, a lot of them end up getting flagged now, because if anyone mentions her name, I try to flag it so that it just goes straight into like the trash bin of my comments. But like I'm still getting comments that are like hateful and cruel, and like especially in the immediate months after that, like it was relentless. I was getting hundreds of comments a day on all of my social platforms. I got detailed threats about killing myself and my horses, where someone said they're going to come to my house and they're going to like bleed my horses out and then kill me. And like obviously for me, it's like I know most of her following is children. It was probably a child. They probably do not live in the same country as me. I live on a gated property with a lot of cameras. So for me, it's like that was an uncomfortable message to receive, but I didn't necessarily feel like it was a threat that was going to follow through. However, I still made a police report. But the mere fact that that threat was made and that I shared it because I wanted accountability made an issue between like me and my landlord, where now boarders at the facility that I live at felt unsafe because of her following, trying to intentionally make me feel unsafe in my own home. And yes, she cannot control her followers' behavior, but what I want to remind people of is, what is she modeling to them? What type of behavior is she modeling to her following? Is she giving people compassion? Is she refraining from personal attacks? Is she refraining from threatening people? Is she refraining from talking about where people live and finding where they live? No, she is exemplifying all of these things that her fans are then doing to, yes, more excessive amounts because she's never given people death threats. But they are taking pieces of behavior that she consistently models and then they are displaying it themselves. So that is why she is complicit. It's not because we expect her to control every single follower. It's because she is consistently modeling that behavior and she is not condemning it. I tagged her in a post where I'd screenshotted the death threats and made it very clear that I was getting them in the situation that was in. She could not even muster any comment on saying, I'm not okay with that. No one should get death threats. That is not okay. And to me, I think that speaks volumes, because it's like with this situation with me, she's had months to correct it. She's had months to walk back on anything. She could have, at like the bare minimum, been like, I don't support or condone death threats. That is way too far. I don't want my following behaving that way. But she did not do that. She has not done anything to try to make it easier for the people that she has then sent her following after. She's made no steps to correct it. So at this point, it's a pattern of behavior. There's mistakes that are being made that are consistently being defended and not corrected. And at some point, she has to answer to the type of environment that she's creating in her following. And now people will bring up the fact that I often will critique welfare and talk about people doing things wrong. And I've been working on my tone a lot. Like in the past, if you look at old videos, there's definitely times where I've done things in a way that is not okay. But accountability is important. If any of my following was behaving in that way, where they're just going at someone and sending death threats and being like that repeatedly, I would be saying something. And I repeatedly say, like, stick to the behavior, criticize the behavior and what they're doing wrong in the moment, rather than the whole of who they are as a person. My discussion on my platforms is very much about talking about the things that I did wrong, talking about the capacity for people to change, and talking about the importance of leaving space for people to make that change, rather than just looking at it through this black and white perspective of people being good or bad. And when you look at things through that black and white perspective of good or bad, I think that what is welfare advocacy actually starts to become more about feeling superior to other people, where you feel powerful and you can look down on people and you can leverage your following to make people that you don't like or agree with feel like shit and try to pressure them into change. And the ironic thing is that she's utilizing a lot of similar tactics to many of the trainers that she criticizes, where it's this very forceful, belligerent, aggressive way of handling things, and you're just trying to pressure and force people into compliance instead of working with them. I think that she probably makes a decent amount of money off of her YouTube videos, and with the money that she's probably made of videos just on this child, she probably could have afforded to buy her some electric fence posts and set up an area for this horse. So if it's really just about improving the horse's situation, automatically treating someone like they are being a villain and going about it by looking at them and going, you are an abuser, you're a bad person, instead of, especially with a kid, going, you're young, you're inexperienced, you are likely following the instructions of adults in your life, and you are a child. Because if I reflect back at the person that I was at 17, 18, I said a lot of things that were like immature and stupid, and I also wasn't completely living my own life. I lived with my family and I got a lot of help and support, and a lot of my belief systems were still things that I had been taught by other adults in my life. So basically what I'm trying to say is that there's a repeat track record here that needs to be answered to, and she continues to evade accountability to try to manipulate and leverage things to justify her own behavior while essentially trying to drag other people into it. So now I'm going to pull up the post of mine that she referenced, because she was just saying, like, I'm not responsible for this girl's mental health. Like, even recently, even Shelby, who I really don't usually like, posted blah 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 about it, an upper level event rider. So first, before I read the post, let's compare these two people. We have a 17-year-old girl living in the UK, probably still living with her parents, and we have a full-grown adult competing at an internationally televised event, one of the largest events in the world, at the 5-star level, who is also a professional rider. Okay? So those are the two differences in those people. And then also we're going to go and look at what I said, because I think that you'll notice that the tone is different. There are no personal attacks in this. And then I also want to reference the fact that it is completely possible for people to weaponize mental health to try to evade accountability. And in my situation with this rider, I believe that is what is happening, because when you read what I said, there's really, if you don't think that you've made a mistake, people would take issue with it. But if they think that they had, they wouldn't be talking about it this way. And then also, like, further, the comments that I got from this person's connections also kind of further prove my point. So this is what I said. I received a message from the person who runs the social media for the rider in the badminton video that I posted prior to this. They attempted to pressure me into removing the video, stating that the mental toll that the rider was having due to online comments. While making mistakes on a global stage sets someone up for unimaginable stress when it comes to dealing with the aftermath of that, I think it's important that upper level riders are held accountable and that we learn from their mistakes. What I want to note is that Raleigh cropped the screenshot that she sent and only included the part where I acknowledged that they'd contacted me about the mental health, and she cropped out the entire rest of the message because she knows damn well that it is not anything like what she said. But anyways, I appreciate how everyone so far on the comments of that post is remaining objective and only discussing the actual writing in the video rather than making statements of who she is as a person or low blow mean comments. Please continue to keep it objective, because ultimately people do not have to be defined by their mistakes or their worst moments, especially those that happen in public, unless they choose to continue repeating and defending them. What I want to stress is this. In the original post by the rider, where she expresses bewilderment about the decision of the stewards, many of her supporters are criticizing the decision of the ground jury in a manner that is no more critical or harsh than what she is receiving based off of the videos of her riding. I think it is abundantly important that we do not create a narrative that serves to protect the comfort of top-level riders to the point where their comfort is centered above everything else, including the horses. There is so much emphasis placed on how the rider is impacted, even when the impact is due to decisions that could have harmed themselves or their horse. It doesn't allow for there to be an open discussion of how the horse is impacted and how the well-being of the horse is often placed aside in the midst. Ultimately, the decision of the ground jury was done in favor of the horse, who has no voice and cannot advocate for himself. It was also done for the safety of the rider, too, and spectators. I find it extremely uncomfortable to receive outward pressure to abstain from discussing internationally publicly viewed and televised content of top-level riders when they do something that admittedly looks bad. With the dangers involved with 5-star events, we do need to be critical of the risks involved for horses and riders. And I think it is important to validate the decisions of the stewards when they make the right call. It goes on, but guys, have you ever seen a video from Raleigh where she uses that type of tone, where she's criticizing someone's content or conduct and actually treats them like a human being? Because also the video that I did on that rider, which you can go watch if you it's on YouTube if you want to watch it too, but it's also on my Facebook page. You can go watch and look through the comments on it. I show the video of the ride and I go, this was dangerous. The ground jury made a great decision that was proactive, and I hope that the rider learns from this mistake. I did not call her an abuser. I did not say that she's a bad person. I did not make fun of her. There was no cruelty involved. So to have that brought up and used as a parallel to herself, I have a problem with that, because I don't conduct myself in the same way. And I also think that the pattern of behavior is the most important thing, because ultimately she can shift this pattern. She doesn't have to keep behaving this way, but it's been a pattern for a while now. And it's honestly gotten worse because when I look back at her old content from even a few years ago, I noticed that her tone was a lot softer and that she was kinder to people and that she was more capable of taking criticism than she seems to be now. And I've noticed that there's been a really distinct shift in tone and how she treats people, and it's for the worse. So that's also something that I think needs to be noted. And I think that it's also damaging the ability for there to be any actual advocacy, because also advocacy is reliant on the belief that people can change, which, going back to the video that she made about me, I also want to make a point about that. She brought up the fact that I worked at the racetrack and used that as a means of discrediting me, despite the fact that I haven't worked at the racetrack in 6 years now. And also just ignoring all of the statements that I've made, where that's no secret. I don't hide my past. I talk about it openly and a lot. And I talk about how my perspectives have shifted over the years and what I now believe about the racing. And it's still less black and white than what she sees. Because again, I think it's important that we look at how humans are involved in all of this, because a lot of horse people are involved in industries that aren't super ethical or doing practices that are not ethical, but they're not doing it from this mean-spirited, malicious intent where they're like, I'm actively trying to hurt my horse. Most people aren't doing that. So we have to look at what conditions people to viewing that these things are acceptable, and understanding that in order to have meaningful advocacy, we need to leave the door open for people to change. And someone at 17 years old, they are going to see so much change just within the next 3 to 5 years, much less in another decade. Like, that is such a young person. That girl is going to change dramatically over the years as she ages and matures, because she is so freaking young. So to be this punitive and unkind to her in a completely unnecessary situation, I think that we need to start looking at this through the standpoint of, what purpose is this serving? What is the point of this? And how harmful can this be in the long run? Because I also just think that, like, if the behavior doesn't change and if she's not held accountable, it is only a matter of time before someone actually ends up getting hurt by the degree of mental toll that they're having to withstand. Because basically what she's banking on is that someone has enough emotional supports in their day-to-day life that they're not going through so much they already feel like they're drowning, and that they'll just be able to weather the impact from her following, which honestly is a lot. Like, I've never received that amount of hatred and cruelty from any specific person or following ever before. And like, I get a lot of harsh comments from people for commenting in the welfare sphere, and I get a lot of mean comments, but it was to a different degree with her following. And what I also want to note is that you don't know what people are going through. So if someone is already struggling to keep their head above water in their regular life before any of this happens, and then they are now getting lambasted by a following of over 400,000 people, that could be the final straw for them. And like, I really don't think that she would want that to happen. Like, I don't think she is that mean-spirited and cruel of a person that she actually legitimately wants to harm people. I think she's getting kind of lost in the sauce and isn't reflecting enough, and needs to kind of take a step back and try to look at this from a more balanced third person view, because I don't think that she's that mean-spirited. Like, I find it really, really hard to believe that she actually wants to harm people. I don't think that she does. But I think that when I think that she likely films and posts things when she's feeling emotionally triggered by people's actions. And then that comes out in the things that she says. And then it's not being edited and looked at before posting. And then also, even in the aftermath of posting, she's not going back and going, like, I maybe shouldn't have said that. And I think that it's very like manipulative. And also, to someone's point in the chat, yeah, when she brings up Ellie Equus' point on suicide and tried to equate it to, well, if I did that to myself, you'd be guilty, Elle. No, the difference in tone is like accountability. This is the thing. That's an example of mental health being weaponized to try to evade accountability. Because again, if you watch Ellie's videos, she's being completely objective, very polite. She's not doing low blow personal attacks. She's not making inflammatory black and white comments. She's discussing the situation through an objective lens where she's looking at it from multiple sides, and she's not trying to paint any one specific person as the villain or dehumanize them. And I think that that's something that's key, is like, I think that a lot of the videos that Raleigh posts are reliant on dehumanizing the people that she's criticizing, to paint them as less human, to paint them as these villains and these bad people who are irredeemable. And then that riles up her following and causes them to attack in the way that they do, because they are not being humanized. And I think that is the key. We need to humanize everybody, because people can and do grow and learn, especially when they're really young. And I'm happy that this youngster posted about what's happening to her and shared it so that people can be aware. And like, she's gotten help, but like, it's not been from Raleigh. Like, the person who bought her the solar panel was from her wish list. And she said when she sent Raleigh the wish list, she said that it wasn't working for her. And like, this is a situation where if you're financially capable of doing so, like, this could have all been handled in the messages. Oh, sorry. Where you could have just sent this girl a message and be like, hey, like, I noticed that your horse is tethered a lot, and like that can be a safety issue. Have you ever considered putting in a solar powered charger with electric fencing and T-posts? If you'd be open to this, I would be happy to help you buy that. Like, it would be that easy. If you're financially capable of doing so, which I'm not right now, but like, if if she was offering to pay for Sox Stallion to be gelded recently, you could fence that horse's area for around $300 if you had to, and get like a smaller charger to start with. But definitely for $500, you could for sure fence a pretty good sized area with electric fencing. So that is like an offer that could have happened. It could have happened behind the scenes first, because again, this is a child. And I think that it is manipulative and in poor taste for her to attempt to compare her going after a singular child with one horse who is getting turned out and having more space to move around than a lot of competition horses do, having free choice access to forage, even though it's not an ideal situation. And he still should have friends, and ideally they would not be tethered. Comparing that to me criticizing an upper level rider competing at the 5-star level at an internationally televised event, and doing so by simply agreeing with the steward's decision to pull her for dangerous riding. Those two situations are not comparable, even just by default of the people and their experience. Like, you cannot compare a 17-year-old child to someone who is competing at the 5-star level, that is a full-grown adult and a professional rider and is knowingly competing at an internationally televised event. This kid had a pretty small following, and I don't think that she started getting the amount of views and comments that she is now until this was discussed. And there's just a lot of ways to handle this in different ways. Like, I'll even give a freaking example of, if I wouldn't have covered this at all because it's a child and it's not a big enough deal that I think that I would use my time to do it, because I would worry about how it would impact the kid. So if I was going to handle this, I likely would have just made a comment. But let's say I was going to make a video on this. I would go, okay, this is really great that this horse has free choice access to forage and space to move around. This is more ideal than being stabled 24/7, but I would have concerns about the safety risk of the rope being stepped on or caught up or between the horse's legs, and also the lack of ability to have full range of motion, movement, ease of use for getting up and down, and also ideally horses should have a friend. So an easy fix for this would be to consider fencing the area with portable electric fencing, which you can do relatively cheaply, and even considering getting the horse a friend, even if it's a goat or a different type of animal, if you're capable of it. It's really that easy. You don't have to go about it in the way that she did. Because I do think that a lot of this comes from feelings of power and like superiority over other people, because it just really, it's damaging advocacy, because you're not giving people a chance. And also when you make them that defensive by just absolutely reaming them out as a person, they're not as likely to take the criticisms after the fact. So like, even the fact that this kid is now reflecting and trying to make changes, even though she has been attacked by people, says a lot about this person. And I think that she's handled it really well. Like, I actually like watching her response to this when she went on like her initial responses to like the immediate backlash are more immature, but she's 17 years old. But she just posted one like last night, and it's very, very mature for her. Like, she's more balanced and emotionally regulated than Raleigh is, and she is 17. So that's the other thing I want to stress. I'm pretty sure Raleigh has like a decade of age on this child. a decade of growth and personal development, and she is still conducting herself the way that she is. And going back to like the track record, Socks is also a great example of the meanness and the cruelty that's involved, because she didn't get her way with that, and she's attacking repeatedly. And again, you don't have to agree with everything someone does. You don't. But from my perspective, looking at that horse as a welfare advocate, he is out full time in a field. Yes, it would be nice if he had friends turned out with him, but he is living better than virtually all of the stallions we see getting used and exploited at the top levels of sport, many of which are stabled alone for the vast majority of their life and subjected to really stressful training practices. Having spoken to Tanya, she told me that until really recently, she didn't even know it was an option for stallions to be turned out with other horses, because all she'd ever been taught was that they had been alone. And that definitely is a thing in our industry. So that's totally valid, because a lot of people believe that, and the industry is shifting and changing, but not everyone is shifting at the same rate. And she said that she was looking into possibilities for that. But like, that's a woman that has had 20 plus videos made about her for like, and they get a lot of views. So I do think that the views and the attention is largely what is driving this, and that it's less about actually making a difference. Because if it were that, the conversation could have been turned to, let's talk about the keeping and handling practices of stallions in the industry and how common it is for them to be socially isolated and locked up. And then she could have used examples from the upper level sport horse industry and showed that it is a repeat occurrence that is a problem. But that's not what happened. It stays fixated on one specific person as an example to continue making fun of them, punishing them, mocking things about them, and being degrading and cruel, and not remaining objective. Because also, it's like, when you're remaining objective, you could look at the aspects of that horse's situation that are good. And he does live a better life than the vast majority of horses, because even stallions aside, a lot of horses are socially isolated and they do not have access to turnout. That is the reality of our industry. A lot of horses are living that way, right? So it's a weird hill to die on, and I refuse to believe that it's motivated by welfare, because then there's a lack of desire to speak out about the broader issue of why that's even a thing and why it exists, and comparing how the average stallion is being kept. So I think that we really need to take a beat, and like, I know even in posting this video, like, I had to think about it a bit this morning. So it's like, I do want to say something about this and try to capture the nuance of the discussion. But I know that in doing this, when she sees this, there's a good chance that I'm going to get a response video that is going to be taking little choice snippets of what I'm saying and being mean and cruel. That there's a good chance that that will happen. And like, I don't want to engage in that. Like, if she joined this live chat right now, we could have a freaking discussion. But I would never reach out to her to suggest that, because she'd just say I'm after content and clout. But it's like, no, an open discussion would be a lot healthier than what we're seeing going on in the day-to-day. So stuff needs to shift online, because this is like it's an accident waiting to happen. And like, I think that it's just going to continue getting worse unless she's truly held accountable by way of like self-reflection. And then the other thing too is that anything weight related, like bringing up people's weight, is like a very sensitive topic. So I think that if we're going to ever have discussions about rider weight, like, there's very little need to use, oh my gosh, Queso, there's very little need to single someone out to use as a specific example, because you could just remain objective and talk about the importance of like matching yourself to the right type of horse, and to making sure your tack is like within the right weight frames, right? Like, you don't need to single someone out and basically subject them to having low blow personal attacks on what they do with their horses. But I've noticed a concerning track record. And like, since she chose to bring, like, I had nothing to do with this situation, and she chose to try to use me as an example to justify her behavior and be like, look, like, Shelby doesn't care about mental health either. If you tell me I don't care about mental health, she definitely doesn't. But there's a difference in tone, and that's the difference. She could have accomplished everything that she wanted to say about the situation, and she could have done so in a different way. Like, she could have still covered this issue and not done it in a way that is going to cause problems in the way that this has. And if you go look at the comments that kid is receiving, it is a pattern that has continued to repeat And at some point, when there's a pattern, people need to stop and reflect and go, she is encouraging her following to do this, because people who have been targeted by it can easily say that this is not something that they've experienced when other people criticize them. Like, I've been criticized by people who like compete at the upper levels and don't like me, and like their followings don't do this. It's not this witch hunty weirdness where it's hundreds and hundreds of people coming at you with personal attacks. I've never experienced anything like this from anyone else, and I've been doing videos online for over a decade. And I also think that it's important to look at the things that she says to try to degrade people. Someone sent me some videos from her Patreon where she was definitely talking about me, and like basically making fun of me for being poor, and was like, oh, I was gonna sue her, but she like literally has nothing. Ha ha ha. I actually kind of feel sorry for her. Like, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like that. And it's like, sue me for what? Like, first of all, sue girl, like bringing up the law, like, you know what you're talking about. Sue me for what? Like, she's telling people that she needs to get a restraining order because I'm stalking her. Haven't been to Florida since grade 3. Don't want to go there right now, most certainly. Like, my grandma even lives there, but she comes here to visit me. I can't stalk someone from the other, like, I'm basically as far away from her as I could go, unless I moved up to northern BC and stayed it like right by Alaska. That's the only way I could get farther away from her than I am. And so there, you can't get a restraining order for that. But she was using that to string along her fans to create this narrative that I am this toxic, evil person that is disrupting her day-to-day life, when actually the opposite was true. It's more true for me. I had people saying they were going to come to my house and kill my horses and poison them and do fucked up, like detailed messages where they were saying explicitly what they were going to do. And also just for people to note, like, even in situations where you're actually getting abused by someone who is in your personal life, like an ex-partner, like, it is very hard to get a restraining order. So there is no way that it was ever on the table for her to legally get a restraining order against me. But that said, the comments that she was making about me were very classist, and they were mocking me for being poor and being like, oh, she has nothing, so there's nothing to sue her for, ha 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 ha, and doing it. And it's like, that's not a secret. I have shared online that my parents went bankrupt when I was a child because my uncle embezzled all of our savings. That's not a secret. I'm proud of what I have built despite that. And I am proud of how I have pushed through the challenges that my family has faced and managed to create what I have despite that. I don't have any shame about that. And I also don't have any shame in asking for help when I've needed it, because people don't know what's been going on behind the scenes. And ultimately, like, she doesn't have to agree with it, but being as cruel and mean-spirited as she was, she doesn't know what the fuck's going on in those situations. When I posted my GoFundMe for George's surgery, like back in 2019, which is one of the things she used in her videos, you want to know something, guys? I was actively helping my mom pay for things and fund getting my brother, who is an active opiate addiction, into treatment. And I was paying my money out of pocket to help with that. So I didn't have any savings. So then when I had this horse that I wanted to save and get him the surgery that he needed to be sound, I was like, I'm going to try to use the social following that I've built to make that happen, because I can't do that. And if you want to fucking call me a grifter for that, go right ahead. But as soon as I have the money to help people in those similar situations, I absolutely want to, because feeling alone and feeling helpless to change your situation, and having such little mental health supports to get free access to treatment facilities and mental health services is really isolating and sad. And that's the reality of the situation I was going through. So through most of the time that I've been on YouTube until like recently, like pre 2020, basically, there was a lot of stuff that was going on in my life that was just ridiculous. And like, I didn't share it in detail, because it's also like, when it involves other people, until they're ready for me to share more of that stuff, it's not a comfortable thing to do. And I also shouldn't need to basically sell my sob story in order to have people empathize with me, and in order to have someone like her not attack me like that. But she also did, like, if you look in the comment section, she that her response video to my video about Charlie Kirk, which would have been from September, she had this little link where she like posted being like, oh, this is like Shelby's response, or I forget what she said, but then there's a link, and if you clicked it, it was a gif of someone being like, help me, I'm poor, and like holding out like panhandling. And it's like, that is just being a fucking bully. There's no way around that. That is just being mean-spirited and cruel. And she made a whole thing about mocking me for not having money, did it on her Patreon, called me a grifter, said that I'm a bad person, and tried to completely character assassinate me because I said that she shouldn't be standing up for someone like Charlie Kirk, especially breaking her political silence to do so. And she tried to take me the fuck down because she didn't like what I had to say. And it would be one thing if she was trying to take me down for my conduct in that video and my current belief systems and things that I'm actually practicing and embodying now. That would be a valid discussion to have. But she was bringing up stuff from the past. She was making things up. She even freaking tried to drag my mom into it and attack my mom. And she was mocking me and my finances and also suggesting that I was stalking her and doing all these things that were not fucking true. And she can get away with it because a lot of the people who follow her are young enough that they do not know how the legal system works. And like, even in this case, the tethering the horse, being like, I know UK law very, very well, and tethering is illegal. And if you look it up, it is not. Quick Google search. It is not illegal. And that does not mean that it is the best way to keep a horse. That's not arguing for the ethicality of it, but it is not illegal. There's Lint behind me, guys. Look at how big he is. He's disappeared behind my chair, but he might reemerge soon. So it's just like, at some point we need to acknowledge the track record of behavior. And even in making this video, I'm not trying to character assassinate her. She's already proven in the past that she's capable of being better than this. But it's like, she's not doing that right now. And she's continuing to double down, defend her behavior, and maintain the same pattern. And she's not entitled to doing that without commentary. So like, even for people that are massive fans of her, because I'm sure that she'll eventually see this and her fans are probably going to come here in the comments of the replay and say shit, but you aren't being a supportive fan if you are constantly enabling shitty behavior. And obviously, as a fan, it is not your job to basically parent people that you follow. But if you are engaging in and helping someone incite that type of behavior, you are complicit in some way. And if you really care about her, I think accountability is the way forward, where it's like, you know what, like, you need to change your tone, man. You need to be nicer about how you explained. Is it character assassination if there's proof of how this person acts? In her case, no. Like, I don't think I'm character assassinating at all, because I'm talking about current events. The character assassination is what I would say she tried to do to me, because her entire argument was comprised off of things that she couldn't prove and things that she made up, and then also bringing up stuff from the past, and then just like labeling me as a bad person. And like, I don't think I'm a bad person. I don't think, calling me a grifter is a joke, because I have really tried to be abundantly honest online. And I've never lied to people about anything. So it's like, it's not grifting to have a GoFundMe and tell people exactly what you're raising money for. Like, that's the opposite of that. Grifting is lying to people. And yeah, she deleted her content about me, unless there was more than 3-ish videos about, no, I don't delete any of my old videos. So like, they're still up that people can go look. Like, there's one that I did on racing, and again, it's like from like 9 years ago, and I was a lot younger, and I was also going through a hard time. So my tone back then is going to be a lot different than it is now, because I'm much less regulated in that timeline of my life. So I'm not going to like condone or say I would handle it the same way now, because that's not true. But it is up if people want to go look at them, then they can see it for themselves. But again, it's like a decade old. And I think that the current patterns of behavior are more relevant about the type of people that we've become, because when you're 20 years old, you're an undercooked human being. And if she, at this point, if she continues to do this behavior, this is going to cause consequences. What if the child's parents learns about the harassment their kids are getting and goes for legal action? Exactly. Also, like, there's been multiple situations where people have basically instigated bullying towards minors, and then if they do end up hurting themselves, even if you're not in the same country as them, you can be held legally liable for that, for cyberbullying. So it is something that I think really needs to be reflected upon, because otherwise she's gonna, like, it's gonna damage what she has built, because she has built a great platform and like a dedicated following. But it's like, it's time to help yourself and your following mature a little bit. and at least stop looking at things in such a black and white way, because it is very black and white. Like there's no capacity for nuance. It's looking at people through the lens of you're either good or you're bad. And if you do this thing that I think is bad, then you're just a bad, terrible person. And it's like, life is not that simple. It is not that black and white. And I do wonder, like, the capacity that someone who truly believes those things could have for empathy. Because like, yeah, criticism isn't bullied is only true when it's not followed with a massive angry following. Also, like, criticism that involves personal attacks and saying really mean things becomes bullying. Like, you can criticize in a bullying way, and I think that it's the context and the way that it's dealt with that ultimately matters. And yeah, like it's not a good situation. And like I tried saying this back in the fall, where I was like, I'm concerned that like basically exactly this is going to happen, that eventually the wrong person is going to be selected, because like she's picking these people to talk about without knowing anything about their lives. And all it will take is just picking someone and having this type of thing happen when that person is already struggling in their own life and cannot deal with it. And like, to give a bit of background info on myself so that people can have context, because like, I'm not a risk to myself, but like when she was sending these things, I was dealing with a lot in my personal life, and then I continued to get hate even as my dad was actively dying in the ICU, even right after he died, even in the months following that. And there were things that, like, if I was a risk to myself, it would have been the perfect storm, because within like a month of his death, my doctor moved practices, and I was supposed to get transferred to another doctor, and then they fucked up and didn't do it. So I got off all of my ADHD meds and stuff and had to go off of them cold turkey. And it was just a shit situation. And I was already depressed. And again, it's like, that's just to paint a picture of like things that people are going through that you don't fucking know about. And like, we gotta have more compassion for people, even in advocacy. I really don't like this idea that like, in order to be a true advocate, you have to dehumanize the people that you're talking about. Because like, I just don't agree with that. Like, even people who are actively beating shit out of horses, like, what do you think made them like that? Like, they don't just come out of the womb being an evil person. They probably had people exemplifying that behavior all throughout their childhood, and they probably have a lot of shit going on. And that doesn't justify the behavior. It's not me defending them. It's just providing context so that people can have a little more humanity and go, wow, these are really broken, damaged people. And I don't condone their behavior. That behavior needs to stop, but I also don't need to completely dehumanize them and treat them like they are the scum of the earth, because I don't think that's also productive. Basically, what that does is it creates a situation where people are being isolated by those who are trying to advocate for kinder ways of doing things. They're being isolated and ostracized from that community. But ultimately, in order to ignite change, they have to leave the community that they are already part of. So then where do they go? There's no safe place for them to go. They're not going to be re-welcomed because people are trying to slate them as forever being a bad person because they did the bad thing. They're stuck in this little like between a rock and a hard place. And oftentimes when people are given those options, they just go back to the community that's familiar and will accept them, which might be the one that's promoting abuse. The other thing that I want to note is that like rarely ever do people who are doing abusive things identify as abusers. There's this idea that people, oh my God, Lynn, you have one of my hair elastics. There's this idea that people who are abusers are like actively acting malicious on purpose, and that's not true. A lot of people who engage in like emotionally abusive tendencies and physically abusive ones, it's coming from a place where they have severe issues they're dealing with too. And again, that's not justifying the behavior. It's just providing understanding, because like people don't want to come to terms with the fact that their behavior is harmful, and they can't often cope with the idea that they're being abusive because they don't want to be that way, but they have other shit going on that is leading them to behaving that way. And it is like it's a thing. Like this idea that abusers are doing it maliciously, intentionally, and on purpose isn't necessarily true. You can do harmful things out of ignorance, out of being reactionary and emotionally unregulated. And I think that you need to just like take a pause and consider like how broken our world system is too, because like people aren't having their needs met. We're seeing a lot of fallout behaviors because people are struggling, right? So in order to change that and have a paradigm shift, we need to find ways to have compassion for people that we don't agree with. And compassion does not equate to enabling. You can hold people accountable while still holding compassion for their humanity. And this is something that I've been really having to practice too, because I get really triggered when people continue to double down and defend abusive behavior. And especially when they like mock people by calling you like tree hugger, like clicker training snowflake, blah, blah, blah. It pisses me off because I'm like, how are you defending this harm? How do you not care? And it triggers me, and then it can result in me getting a lot more snippy with my comments. But it's like, does that actually help the situation? Probably not. So ultimately, it's like we have to kind of shift the way that we do things if we want to actually make the changes that we claim that we want to make. And I don't think that her conduct is conducive to actually changing people's minds. Like it's basically a circle jerk for all the people that already agree with her, where anyone that doesn't agree with her is not going to listen to really inflammatory worded things where she's being really harsh and like actually take in that information, even if she has a good point. She also doesn't necessarily go into like stuff to describe to people like, here are the problems with this XYZ thing, and just talking about it objectively. Like I think that's the thing I have to stress the most is objective discussion. Talking about the situation in front of you at face value without personalizing anything or adding your emotions into anything, and just looking at what you're looking at face value. But doing so probably wouldn't be as interesting to the fan base she's built, because I think a lot of this is about the drama. It's about the like high level inflammatory nature of things, and it's basically like kind of like reality TV, where it's like hyper inflated to cause problems on purpose to make things more interesting for everybody involved. Yeah, and I also don't agree with like, calling Elle a fake advocate in response to the video. She's 100% is an advocate. Her content is really good, and she consistently explains things well and has compassion for people and has built a platform to do so. It's very dismissive to just, as soon as someone doesn't agree with your behavior, to go, oh well, you're just a piece of shit, you suck, and attack them like that. And like that's also what I see happening a lot. So yeah, exactly. It behooves us to understand that everyone is capable of doing bad things. It's honestly a privileged position to be able to say, I would never. I also think that people in that I would never position, especially with like growing up in the horse world, I think a lot of those people harbor deep shame, and like part of that shame is putting on a persona that they've done nothing wrong and doubling down and being like, I've never made mistakes. And I think that that's part of that. So I question anyone who can't reflect and look at behaviors that they've engaged in that are harmful, because like I just don't think that that's true. This idea that you've always been perfect, you're pretty much guaranteed to have hurt someone along the way and either not been aware of it. So if you like truly think you haven't, you probably haven't self-reflected enough. And like maybe there are these mystical people who've never done anything wrong in their lives, but I don't think they're very common. So I think that that is a really weird position to be in. It's also very weird to like look at people again who are children and be like they should know better, because it completely lacks capacity to understand what early childhood psychology shows. Like kids are very susceptible. They're like little sponges, and they take in the actions and behavior and belief systems of the people that they're most closely aligned with. So basically it's luck of the draw. Like whoever your first trainer is selected to be, their belief systems are going to be ultimately what you end up harboring, because like it is just not fair to expect a child to be able to argue with a full grown adult who is posing as an expert on certain things. Like I started riding when I was 4, expecting me as a 4-year-old to know how to call out my trainer and like hold her accountable is ridiculous. And then also, even as I aged, it's like I grew up before the internet was really a thing. Like we didn't really have Facebook or anything like that until I was 12, at which point I've been writing 8 years. And even then, Facebook didn't have what it has now. The information wasn't as widely shared and accessible. There wasn't as many people on it. So I was effectively in an echo chamber for a lot of my life, honestly, like until I hit high school and then started being exposed to different perspectives on Tumblr. And then that started to shift my perspective. But initially I was very defensive because like it's hard to grow up believing that you're doing something right and that you know a lot because you've been writing for so many years. And then basically have a bunch of people tell you that you're doing things wrong and that you're harming your horse because you never go into it wanting to harm your horse and you've just been following instructions from people that you've trusted. And that is the reality of a lot of people in the horse world. So having empathy for the fact that it's like ultimately what's happened is this child was betrayed by their role models. This child was taught to do things that are harmful to horses, and they were led astray by adult role models. And now, even as they get older, they're still harboring those belief systems because it's really hard to undo them. And it takes a lot of inner work and self-reflection to do that. And it's not an easy thing to do, especially doing it at all in the public eye where you're being judged. It's really, really difficult. And yeah, like kids will just model the behavior that is demonstrated around them. So if you're constantly around adults that are doing harsh things to horses, eventually you'll start to think it's okay, especially because in order to exist in that environment, they have to encourage the kids to be okay with it. And you're taught not to question things. You're taught not to push back. And yeah, so it's unrealistic. And like anyone can really be groomed to harm horses because of how prevalent it is. And it really depends on what environment you're in. So in order to get people out of those environments, we need to explain things and also offer them a door. So it can't just be like, oh, you made a mistake. You're forever a terrible person. And I'm going to bring up shit from years ago to try to hold you to the standard of who you used to be and never let you move on from that. That doesn't help because it discourages people from doing the right thing. Punishing the behavior that you want to see is counterproductive to creating systemic change. If people are doing things that we want them to be doing to improve welfare, we need to be reinforcing those types of behaviors by encouraging it. And like this girl now is trying to make changes for her horses, and yet there's not really acknowledgement of that on the part of the person who initiated this assault on her social media, because that's honestly what it is. And saying this all objectively, because it's just like we don't want to foster an environment that normalizes this witch hunt rhetoric that looks at things through such a black and white lens that people are irredeemable and that they deserve to be treated like this. And like this idea that that it's okay to just treat people like shit because you don't agree with what they're doing. I don't really like that. Like, I understand that people have their limits and we can lose patience and we can act outside of what's okay sometimes. But when it's a repeated, consistent track record, that's a lot different than just having like a lapse in self-control or self-regulation on like an offhand, on an off occurrence. So like, I think that aspect is important, and that there needs to be nuance in these discussions, because life is not as simple as labeling people as just good or bad. And like, I think overwhelmingly so, what needs to be looked at is that Raleigh had the capacity to empathize and try to see the good in someone like Charlie Kirk. And if she cannot do that for a 17-year-old kid in the same situation, not the same situation, with her platform, where she's holding a child like that more accountable than a grown-ass man who used his platform to spread divisive rhetoric and hatred, that does say something, because it's less about having compassion for people, and it's more about like having selective compassion based off of who you align most closely with. And I do think that speaks volumes, because if you're aligning more closely with someone who targets marginalized people and spreads divisive and hateful rhetoric, and you can align with them and empathize with them more than you can a child on the internet that is keeping their horse in the circumstances that they were taught to do and that their parents likely enable, that is a fucking problem. And that is a character flaw that needs to be examined and called out and ultimately changed. Because if she doesn't want to change it, if she wants to double down, then it's like people have every right to criticize that behavior, because it just makes no sense. If you've proven that you have the ability to try to look at things with nuance when it's someone that you want to defend, even when most of their behavior is indefensible. Like I can't really talk about the good of, yeah, I still can't get over the opinions that weren't that bad. Look at this gay black man that agrees with me. I really hate when people tokenize minorities to try to prove their point, because they're also trying to paint the illusion of like, this is what the black community believes, when overwhelmingly so, if you look at where they stand politically, it is not that. And if you look at where they stood with stuff like the George Floyd riots, it was not with, oh, that's totally okay how the police behaved. Let's now make memes mocking the death of this guy that got murdered by police. I'm going to be real. I think that Rick, I think Like a Horse has a lot to do with how Raleigh is. He was a big influence on her. And IMO, he is a dick. He is. Yeah, he is. I don't think he's a nice guy. And the way he handles things is like very similar. In terms of how he would approach, like, basically, I'm right, you're wrong. Anyone who doesn't do what I do is a piece of shit. And he also, like, I remember on his website, he had stuff that just like wasn't true. Like he was posting misleading information about padded performance horses. And it's like, yeah, that is an industry that needs to get called out, but you should make sure that what you're saying is true. Otherwise it destabilizes the argument. It makes it not clear. See, this black man agrees with me and it's Uncle Ruckus. Yeah, that's really funny. But yeah, like if we look at history, there's always been minorities that would sell out against themselves. Basically, there's always been people like that. So tokenizing them and using them to justify the behavior of someone who has acted outside of those people's interests is really problematic. And I really hate that. And like, especially as a white person, I think that as a creator, she needs to immerse herself in more diverse communities and actually listen to people's stories, because then she would probably understand why Charlie Kirk was such a divisive person and why so many people don't want to try to be like, oh, well, like, let's try to see the good in him. Because just because someone dies doesn't mean you have to see the good in them. You don't have to celebrate someone just because they died. Like, dying is something we all do. We don't owe that to anyone. You don't have to celebrate them. And you can acknowledge who they were when they were alive and the harm that they caused. But yeah, like talking to lots of other people helps build empathy. And if you actually sit down and talk to Black people who are existing in the current climate, it is pretty eye-opening. And for those who don't know about me, my dad was Black. So I have a Black family that I can sit down and have these discussions with. And when I went back to Ontario while he was in the ICU and dying, I had a lot of these conversations with his family, and it was a really interesting and good. It was good to hear. Like, and as a general rule, like, they're not supporting the people that are actively vying for dehumanizing and harming them. Like, I can't get on board with the fact that like anyone who's like, oh, if there's a Black pilot piloting my plane, I would be concerned. Like, that's a fucking insane thing to say. There's no way around the fact that that is racist. And like, ultimately, if you want to empathize with people who say things like that and support them, it does color who you are as a person if you're willing to try to see the humanity in those people and not others. Yep, this is why I believe a big part of her harassment campaign against you is anti-Blackness. Yeah, like as soon as the tokenizing happened, I was like, I really don't like this. I really don't like this. And also the comments about being poor and stuff and the elitism there, very uncomfortable shit. Because yeah, like I I don't agree with the idea that if you are struggling that you don't deserve to be treated like a human, or that it's like using it as like a source of shame, like it's a personal failure, is really not okay to me, because it's usually a systemic failure. And yeah, like I can't really get on board with any of that. And it makes me really uncomfortable to see people tokenizing Black people, because even on my end, it's like I don't like to be the only voice for like what Black people experience, because I'm obviously extremely white passing. And so that's why in the past I've done panels where I've invited people that actually have to walk through this world as a Black person and share their stories, because their experiences are a lot more relevant than mine, because they get typecasted and treated differently simply for looking the way that they do. Whereas I've been able to hide under the veil of being white passing and ambiguous enough that like most white people don't clock me as biracial. Black people do, but most white people don't. And interestingly enough, it's almost always white people who are the ones that are like, "Oh, you're not Black. Like you're not Black. Your dad's probably not actually Black." Blah 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 blah, which is also racist, because like yeah, there's a lot of mixing if you go back and you look at the family trees of Black people. But like, you want to know why that is? Fucking go look up history of the slave trade and what they were doing to people who were living back then, and then maybe consider shutting the fuck up, because not all of that mixing was by choice. And ultimately, it's like, yeah, anyone that was brought here from Africa is likely to be mixed if they were living here during the slave trade. But yeah, it's usually white people doing that again, who try to basically be like, oh, like, you don't get to have a say because you don't pass my color swatch test. I don't see you as being Black, so therefore your culture, not yours to claim. Fuck you. And it's usually white people doing that. But I tried to watch her video, but when I see she pulled see a Black person, no, it was a gay Black person. So she got the double whammy. Surprised she didn't try to go for the holy trifecta and find like another minority card that he had to be like, look at this gay Black disabled person that agrees with me. And it's like, okay, but like look at all the ones who fucking don't. Look at the majority who do not. So tokenizing someone to try to like hold weight to your side when you're defending someone who is a racist, not okay. I have two biracial kids, and that hurts me from your perspective. It hurts me too. Like honestly, like with my dad passing away now, it's like I don't have that connection to him being alive anymore. And I find it even more hurtful now when people try to be like, oh, well, like you don't get to do XYZ, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, it sucks existing as biracial person, where like not in the sense where you're experiencing racism, but you're kind of just like in between everything. You don't fit in anywhere. You sit in this weird in between where you can never be fully accepted by either identity, and people try to devalue your identity regardless of where you are. Because when you're hanging around white people, oftentimes it is that people often harbor a lot of racist tendencies and they say things that aren't okay. So you have to choose between, do I want to be the stick in the mud that, well, they're going to perceive as the stick in the mud, constantly rocking the boat by telling them that they're being fucking racist, or do I just cope with what is being said and just like handle it? And I of course chose to be the stick in the mud. And then it's also like, yeah, you're not Black enough to be Black, so you don't fit in anywhere, and it sucks. So it's a weird, yeah. Add autism to that with no super special interest. Yeah, my super special interest was obviously horses. But yeah, so see, to me, it's no different. It's not something I would personally do, but if someone was in his comment section and they came to him, I can see where he's not for everyone, but he doesn't attack the way that Raleigh does. I'm assuming we're still talking about Rick Gore in the comments. But yeah, like that's why I try to platform both sides of like my experience, and also try to advocate for the experiences that I don't necessarily live in my day to day, but like bring light to them. And that's also why I'm like more sensitive to the fact that like, to me, that initial response video that I did about Charlie Kirk, like to explain it from my perspective, I watched someone with a following of 400,000 subscribers choose to empathize with someone who I have seen for years relentlessly attack Black people, joke about the death of one who was murdered by police officers, spread misinformation that ended up being proven completely false in court, and continue to do so for years after that man's death, even when the family was seeing it and they were expressing how hurtful it was. I've seen him devalue Black people's ability to work and say that he thinks that they're inherently less intelligent. And that's something that I witnessed for years. And then to go and see someone who stands on this moral background choose to break their political silence to defend that man, that was personal for me. And that's ultimately why I chose to speak on it. A lot of people have been like, you didn't have to reply to it, but she also didn't have to platform and empathize with someone who is racist, especially when you've chosen not to say anything during any other political issue or advocate against that type of thinking in any way. Like, you're not speaking for marginalized people. So when you then choose to speak on behalf of someone who is attacking marginalized people, I want to say something about that, because you're not living in the same North America as marginalized people are when you're a white woman. And like, that's not an attack. It's not to say that you don't experience challenges, but like, when you're existing as a white woman, you are not living the life that marginalized people do. You're not being dehumanized like they are. Your challenges are different. You're never going to be discriminated in the way that people of color are for your race when you're white, because white people hold all the cards in power in our modern society right now. And yeah, as a mixed Black and Native person, something I've learned is just accept both of myself, and the best I can. It's harder being mixed when you're darker skinned because of public colorism. Yeah, like, also, it's just like, whenever you're mixed, people are like, oh, like, what are you? Like, what are you? So exotic. What are you? It's like, why are we talking about me like I'm a fucking like creature at the zoo or something, like at a pet store? It's weird. And I think it was good you did speak on it. If she's going to downplay his vile behavior, it's important to talk about what he was actually like. I agree, especially because it's like a very young, impressionable following. And it's like, I do think it is a statement of values when you choose to empathize and advocate for people like that, and then do not use your platform to do it for anybody else. And also, in the time since then, there's been more time to speak up and advocate for people who actually need the public press, because also someone like Charlie Kirk he doesn't need more media attention. He doesn't need more attention. And like his family has a lot of money. They're fine. They have a lot of power. They're supported by a lot of high profile people. They're fine. There's a lot of people who are marginalized and who are getting like split up from their families, getting like discriminated at work, having like being attacked because they're just existing as a person of color in the United States, and they're being assumed that they're not from there because they're not white. And there's so many times that like those people are the ones that actually need people to talk about them, because they're not getting fucking covered by media. They're not getting empathized. They're not being talked about in the same way because they're being discriminated against. And when people consistently choose not to do that, and when worse, they choose to empathize with the very types of people who abuse people like that, it does paint your values in full sight. And I think that those are subject to criticism because they can also change. Values can change. My boyfriend is Polynesian, and he's had people ask him if that's even a real race. That is so ignorant and like so embarrassing on their part. Holy shit. It's like, okay, just because Polynesian is a big word to you and you're clearly uncultured, like, freaking Google it, or just be like, hey, I've actually never heard that before. Like, where's that from? Like, people are so stupid. Oh, that's also why we need to hear more about other people's experiences, because like then we don't have people saying shit like that. And like, honestly, that's the bigger issue, is that like a lot of these people spreading the divisive hatred, they don't care about other people's experiences, and they speak as an authority as if they understand every person's individual experience, right? And then when you see them get like even a shred, a fraction of what it might feel like to be discriminated against, they fucking freak out. A great example of this would have been white people with masks during the pandemic. And obviously it wasn't just white people, but it was predominantly white people where they're, this is a violation of my bodily autonomy and my rights as a human. Meanwhile, the same people will advocate against bodily autonomy for women and trans people to make choices that they want for their bodies, that have nothing to do with anyone else, and try to step into other people's lives in a much more invasive way. And then they're complaining about wearing masks. And there's lots of other good examples that aren't coming to my mind right now, where there's just minor inconveniences that privileged people have to deal with, and they throw themselves and act like they are being discriminated against. And I've been watching this stuff unfold, like for like especially the last 6 years, and just being like, imagine if they actually had to like wake up and just navigate the world as a minority for one day and not be able to walk around speaking to people how they do, trying to throw their weight around how they do, basically pulling the like Karen, can I speak to the manager bullshit how they do, and expecting everyone to bend to their will. Imagine if they had to exist in the world as a person of color for one day. Like guaranteed, if Charlie Kirk was black, he would not have been able to build what he did. He probably would have died a lot sooner because he would have been murdered for what the things that he said. Similarly, like if Donald Trump was black, there's no fucking way people would still be defending his behavior. People would be assuming that he's the bad guy before he even did anything wrong. So there's just this such a clear division in terms of how willing people are to notice bad behavior depending on who does it. Like if you pick it, you could freaking make a fake image of a black person and write a fake story that's identical to what an actual sitting white politician has done, or someone in the Epstein files, cough, cough, Donald Trump. You could do that and list that off, and people would be like, wow, that's terrible, throw him to prison, or like death penalty, blah, 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 blah. But then when it's Donald Trump, they'll be like, oh, but like that might not be true. Like but the drag queens. And it's like, bro, there's so much evidence that the problem is the fucking white politicians, powerful white men, and like your priests and shit in church, and you're fucking bringing up drag queens, the cool people that have fantastic makeup and that are fun and engaging and charismatic and make children laugh, who haven't been linked to like anywhere near the degree of risk that everyone else has been. It is ridiculous. And so that is why I spoke on these types of things, because when I see that behavior, I know it's a track record response where it's like, if you think like that, you are probably involved in the underlying theme of enabling abusive behavior today in the politicians that we're seeing, and trying to police minorities while basically thinking that you should be completely unaccountable for everything. I think I honestly hate Erica more than oh yeah, I do. 100p. I do really enjoy the memes about her. They are really funny. But I despise her, because also she was able to build what she did because of feminism. Like she went to school, she has so much, she's gone on dating shows, she's done stuff where she's like completely defying what she claims to stand for now and what she's trying to do to women. Like she is the byproduct of feminism, and yet she's fucking fighting against that. I cannot stand her. It's kind of the same thing as like someone like Ghislaine Maxwell, where it's like Epstein was like the biggest problem with that, like that whole thing where he's like the figurehead of it, but like women trusted her. Women and girls trusted her, and ultimately because of her there were way more victims, because she pulled the woman card to get more people to trust her and like lure them in. And like I really hate that, because it's women being against women, and like that makes me like, with men you kind of expect a lot of men to be misogynistic and to not empathize with women in the way that they should. But when it's another woman doing it, it's just like it makes my skin crawl. It makes me really sad, because it's just like you are actively harming other people who do not have the same privileges as you, just so that you can get a seat at the table with all of these bad people. And it makes it really difficult to sit with. And like that's again, it's a similar example to finding a gay black man that's willing to defend a racist guy like Charlie Kirk. There's a ton of women who will defend misogyny. And ultimately it's because when they do so, they are treated better by all of the men that are kind of maintaining that perspective. So they get like more of a seat at a table, and they get thrown a bone, but they're still being walked on a leash. So it's like against their own interests, because it's like eventually, as soon as they no longer need you, or as soon as you become a problem, they will cut you down and they will not fucking care. It's always a creator job to at least say something when they know people are using their words. Plus, oh my God, hurt yourself. Yeah, I agree. One of my favorite things is learning about different cultures and different people and their experiences. I think everyone should be open-minded and accepting. I agree. Like, honestly, if you just sit down and you listen to people, it paints a different perspective. Like, again, it kind of like people that kind of look down on and like hate on like homeless people, they've never fucking talked to them, or they just like are completely deprived of empathy. Because if you actually listen to people's stories about how they ended up where they are often very tragic, and it paints a picture of like, wow, I had so many safety nets and things to help protect me and make sure that I don't have that happen to me. Not everyone has those, and this is someone who could not cope with what life was throwing at them and who is being consistently failed by society. And that's how I view like all homelessness. Like, when people are like, oh, well, they should just like stop using drugs. I don't fucking care if someone's using drugs. They still deserve to be treated like a person. They still deserve to have like a clean place to like shower and bathe, like a roof over their head. They deserve food, they deserve water. I don't fucking care if they're using drugs. Because there's a lot of really fucking rich people who are using tons of drugs and who can cover it up because they have the money to do so. And no one cares if they're addicts, if they can play the role of being fine, even if they're fucking up the entire world, and actively causing harm. Like, but they destroy the houses with the drugs. I don't fucking care. Fix them. There's so many. We have enough empty houses to house everyone. We have enough food to feed. Oh my God, Lint is carrying the lid, guys. He's leaving. Oh, I just missed it. He's carrying the fucking food lid. Like, literally like a dog, but he does it at such random times that it's so hard to capture it. Like, he's just walking with like the little lid, like the silicone lids that you put over top of cans in his mouth. We can have both creator responsibility and parental balance. There's guidance, there's balance. Yes, 100%. Go get your lid. He threw it under the door. Oh my God, he's throwing it around. I'll wait for him to come back in here and then I'll move the camera. But look at those doors, because he's like right there. He is. Bring the lid in here, Lint. Come on. But yeah, like, I think everyone has a responsibility to talk to marginalized people and their challenges before they like make judgments about them. Because like, whenever someone like, I try not to make assumptions, but whenever someone shows that lack of empathy, I kind of assume that they've always had safety nets available to them where they've never actually truly had to like have the world fall apart to the degree that other people do. Yeah, it's very important for white women to remember that we have historically aided and abetted the patriarchy. We are very much a part of the problem. Agreed. And that's also, that's not an attack. It's just an acknowledgement of the situation. Because like, the system has been ongoing for long enough that a lot of us are complicit in participating in it to some degree. So like, we have to look at the role we play and how that can change. And honestly, like, a really great way to change that is just by talking to people and learning about their experiences and humanizing them. And yeah, off topic, but is the skull in the back real? Does it have it is real. I don't like, I asked the guy, I got it off of Craigslist for $40 a few years ago. And I asked the guy about it to like see if he knew the horse's history, and he doesn't. It's like a smaller skull, so it's like a smaller sized horse, like not a pony, but probably like a really dainty headed horse. And it's likely from a gelding or a stallion because it has canine teeth. And based off of the damage to like the bars of the mouth and like right around the canine teeth, I think that it was probably like some type of racehorse or something like that, where it would be sustaining bit damage of some sort, because it has like a bony mass right by the canine tooth, which is probably from like the bit hitting the tooth as it came down. But yeah, other than that, I don't really know the story, unfortunately. But I was really happy that I got it, because it was like a steal of a deal. Like, you can, like, looking at skulls now, like, you can't get them for that cheap. Yeah, being self-made is such a dumb myth. You were lucky enough to be seen and accepted by the right people, even if it was just being accepted for a job, minimum wage. Yeah, like, honestly, everyone's made by the communities that they're in. Like, I would consider myself self-made in the sense that it's like, I've built my business myself, but it's not without the support of other people in the world around me. And like, that's the thing, is it takes a community, because like ultimately it's like I was able to build what I did because my parents could afford to put me in riding lessons when I was young. So even as like everything in our lives fell apart when we went bankrupt, I already knew how to ride well enough that I could continue doing what I was doing, and I could get opportunities that other children who don't know how to ride couldn't get, because they didn't have the experience to do those jobs. So I'm privileged from that standpoint, because even though my family lost all their money, like I had a really good head start to build experience that then afforded me the opportunity to get more free experience and also get jobs in the industry. And do you like horse taxidermy too? I see one taxidermist that does them and gets horses that have been neglected. It's so beautiful. I do like it. I find that a lot of horse taxidermy is really bad though. So when people do it well, it's always amazing. But I find that a lot of people make them look kind of weird. Yeah. So Lint is like, he might bring the lid over here. I'm kind of hoping he will. And I see he has another one shoved under the door by my dead plant right there. So like he's collecting them. He also had, like, I'm pretty sure it was dark, so it might have been my eyes, but I'm pretty sure he took one out onto the catio the other night and was like running around. Like he carries this shit like all over the house, guys. Like I need to set up cameras, because like he do be carrying shit everywhere. Like the other day I was taking my vitamins and I took the lid off the vitamin container and I put the lid beside me, and he was sitting on the counter beside me. And like the second I set it down, he grabbed it in his mouth and just took off with it, and then dropped it on the floor and like batted it as hard as he could under the couch. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me, dude? Yeah, I've heard some horses can get the wolf teeth surgically removed because they interfere with the bit. The wolf teeth are different than the canine teeth. So they're like these really smaller teeth that are even further up than canines, and vets generally do remove them when the horses are young. Oh, he's gonna take that lid. Okay, guys, wait for it. Oh no, he's just gonna watch Phoebe. Are you gonna go attack her? Maybe. He's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Phoebe, what are you licking off the floor? Linz should, yeah, he should have a social media account called Linz Lids. Yeah, I need to make him an account, because he do be doing a lot of things. Yeah, like he's hunting the dog right now. I don't know what he thinks he's doing. Yeah, you're gonna go try to get her the other way. Okay, see ya. He's a good guy, that little dude. And oh yeah, speaking of Lint, like the other crazy thing that again is related to the overarching theme of this discussion is like I found Lint like in a bush like about a week after I did the response video to Raleigh, and I had so many people from her following accuse me of like only saving him for social media clout. And sir, what are you doing in there? Phoebe, come here. Come here. What are you guys doing? I had so many people accuse me of only rescuing him for social media clout, and like I was reading these comments going like if you saw a freaking kitten the size of like a kiwi on the side of the road, would you really just like drive by it and just not save it? Like I was like jaw dropped. And then and then there was other ones that were being, well, if you really cared, you would have saved the rest of the kittens. And I was like, this is insane. Like these are people who are called like saying that they're welfare advocates, and you're being an asshole to someone who tried to capture all of the cats and ultimately couldn't. And yeah, it was a very weird situation, because like there's zero situation in which I would like not like honestly like seeing a cat anywhere that they probably shouldn't be. Like I do live in a farmy area, so like full grown adult cats, a lot of them are barn cats, so I would be more hesitant to like round them up. But I am gonna try to get, because I'm pretty sure I've been doing my investigation. I'm pretty sure that there is like a cat colony that lives on one of the properties at the end of my road that would have been like right across the street from where I found Lint, because they were like in the bushes across the street. And I see a lot of the cats going in and out of that area, including the female that is Lint's mom. And I'm going to leave those people a letter, and I'm going to be like, hey, I noticed that these cats are on your property a lot. Like there's at least 1 or 2 unneutered males, like, could I catch these cats and get them fixed? Because I need to trap on that property. So that's also the other thing is like, if I took a video of like what I had to work with in catching these cats, I think that people would understand, because basically it's a road like this. On this side there's private farm property, and on this side there's private farm property. The land that the cats are on, like, I tried to knock on the people's door to ask if I could trap on their property. And I couldn't get a hold of them. And then like same thing with the other area. So then the only thing I had was like the shoulder of the road, which is like only like probably that much. So like basically the cage was like right off the shoulder of the road, which obviously is not the ideal location to catch cats because they're not going to be super comfortable there. And technically it is illegal to catch on public land, but I was just like, who's going to fucking report me? Worst case scenario, they steal a trap and I have to get a different trap. But so I did that for a while, but then it's like the cats just lost interest in the traps and I couldn't catch them. And the way that I caught Lint was that he was so hungry that when I had the cans of wet food, like all of the kittens were coming out, but he was like the bravest and he was like eating a bunch of it. And then I was gradually like grabbing the container and like dragging it inside of like this kennel. And then he eventually followed it into the kennel and I slammed the door and like he freaked out and he was like trying to slam against the door to get out and was like running around. Like I felt so freaking bad. It was awful. And like I felt bad to the point where I was like, oh my God, should I like leave him and wait to try to catch him with his siblings? And I was like, no, it's really unlikely that I'm going to get all of them in the same cage all at once. So I took him. And then when I found how starved he was, I was like, okay, this was the right decision. Because also during that process, like while I was trying to catch the kittens, one of the neighbors who was not at, like, she didn't own the property that they were going onto, but she was like right beside there. She like pulled over and was like lecturing me for like 15 minutes on the side of the road, was like, where are you from? I've never seen you here. You don't live here. And I was like, I've lived at the end of this street for like over a year. So like not my problem if you haven't seen me, I guess, but I live here. And then she was like being like, these cats have homes. And I was like, well, they're super young and they shouldn't be living outside when they're this young of kittens. So I guess if they have homes, I'll trap them and then someone can contact you to collect their cats if they have homes. And then when I brought Lint home and he had like 5 million fleas on him and was like as starved as he was, I was like, fuck that lady. If she wants this cat back, I'm saying no. Because he was like so unhealthy. But yeah, trapping cats is not hard. I mean, it is hard, sorry. And like honestly, like even if it's like a situation where it's like I caught the one kitten and then didn't try to get the others, it's like you still saved one cat. Ultimately, it's not my responsibility to clean up other people's mess that they created, and I still did. And we put so much money into that cat to get him healthy. And yeah, but my friend called me as her disabled daughter, so justified it by referring to maid. Huh. Yeah, I have not seen that. I've seen documentaries following animal rescue stuff. Cats are very difficult to catch, even for pros. Yeah, like I think for the cats, the easiest way to catch them is to put the traps in areas that they're frequenting the most and that they're the most comfortable in. And they're clearly living at like this shop area. And I'm hoping that those people will work with me to let me trap them there, because then I'd actually be able to get them, I think. Because I'd be able to change the trap location and it would be all within like the areas that they're already going. Because like that area, like they have to be feeding them, I think, because they're always on that property. And since it's not like it's like a business property, so I'm thinking that they're probably stray cats that just live in the area, and the guys working at that shop just started feeding them to be nice. And then hopefully they won't care if I get them fixed then. Because like I'd need to trap on the area that they go on, because like it's just not going to work on the road. And then also it's just like less safe to have the cats on the road, and I can't always check the traps multiple times a day when I'm working. So that's kind of the plan, because there looks to be like, they're definitely not Lint siblings because they're not gray, but there's like 2 adolescent-ish cats that are like around the same looking age as him, probably. That must be from a different litter that survived, but I haven't seen his siblings, so I honestly think that they died, unfortunately. But yeah, again, it's just like, you got to do what you can do with the situation. And like it's this purism perfectionistic culture where there's this expectation that people need to fucking save the world, or that they're like not a real advocate or whatever. It's like really stupid. And also like you got to have empathy for, like, I had someone go off on me for talking about trapping and releasing the cats because they are not mine. And I was like, like in a perfect world, you would like adopt them out. But like ultimately, like if I'm asking for permission to trap on the people's property and they want the cats back, like I have to do what I can. And having the cats be neutered and spayed so that they cannot continue reproducing is a net positive compared to just leaving them the way that they are. So, and also like some of the cats are older, so like I think they'd be really hard to rehabilitate into homes and not have be like barn cats. So that's the other thing to consider. But it's like ultimately like, I have to work with the people if I'm going to ask permission to trap on their land, because like it would be a really fucking terrible thing to get the permission to trap on the land, get the cats, and then take them to get spayed and then like never bring them back. Like that would make me an asshole. And especially when the people are working with me to try to improve the situation. But first I have to leave a note, because I'm hoping that they will let me do that. But yeah, the alternative is just having them have several litters a year and have most of those kittens die, and the ones that survive continue contributing to decimating bird populations and like doing shit that they're not supposed to do. Because yeah, like that's really the only thing. And also like there's so many cats that there is a chance they'll be okay with me taking some of them to the shelter. But like yeah, I have to ask, and like there's not always people there. So yeah, I'm just gonna type up a nice letter and leave a note on their door. And I guess this also goes into the importance of nuance, because you want to know what I'm gonna do in writing that note. I'm not gonna be a fucking asshole in the note. I'm not gonna be like, you guys are taking care of cats that are prolifically reproducing, and my kitten that I found from that litter almost died because of you. I'm gonna just be like, hey, I have noticed that there are several cats that are coming on and off your property, one of which is the mom of a kitten that I rescued in September who was very ill and very skinny and very poorly. He had two other siblings that I haven't seen around, so I'm worried that they passed away because of the challenges that outdoor cats face. I am hoping that I can capture some of these cats to get them spayed and neutered so that the kittens don't continue being at risk. Would I get your blessing to put some traps on the property since they frequent that property? And yeah, because that's the plan. So and hopefully they'll say yes, because if I'm mean to them, they're very unlikely to say yes. And I don't want to freaking cause problems, because the ultimate goal is to just have the best chance to get the okay to capture the cats, because yeah, they're straight up not doing well. Most likely, like they're probably also covered in fleas, so it'd be nice to take them in and like get them defleed, get their spay and neuter, and then they can return to where they are. Or if the people don't want them back, they can go to the shelter. And that's that, because it's very hard to see with like how the kittens are suffering. Are we sure that RL is even a vet at all? Last I heard that nothing had progressed on that front. Is she finally licensed? I don't think so, man. Like, I'm not gonna judge, but just like I'm pretty close with my vets and I'm very involved in that clinic, and I've been taking my horses to the same clinic for over a decade. And there's definitely more vet schools in the US than there are in Canada, because I think Canada only has like 2 or 3. But you can't move around from state to state that much and still be actively attending vet school. So that would be my thinking on it, is that it's a pretty intensive and all-encompassing program, because like vets are based like that, they're doctors. Like my hot take is that I think that if you sign a release form, it should be legal for you to go to a vet clinic if you need like stitches or some easy procedure, and they should just be able to do the procedure if you pay it, and just like waive your right to recourse if something happens, because vets are typically better at stitching things well than emergency ER doctors are, and you would have less of a wait. So that's my hot take, because I would way rather just call up my vet and be like, hey, I split my head open. Can you come and stitch me up? or like I split my knee open or whatever, come stitch me up, because I know they do a good job. They'd have lidocaine. It'd be a nice experience. Wouldn't have to go to the hospital. So that's my hot take, because they're awesome. But yeah, like I don't think you can't move around that much while doing the program, because it's really intensive. And yeah, they have to learn about like so many different species, and like yeah, you do specialize, but it's like so much general knowledge, right? Like you have to know so freaking much. Because like just think about the amount of different calls the average vet is dealing with, like even horse vets, like the amount of different things they're dealing with on a daily basis, and also the level of a danger involved with horses and like large animals in specific. Like small animal vets don't have to worry about being as meticulous about how they sedate animals, because even if you over sedate an animal and it gets more loopy than what you're intending, they're never at risk of falling on you and crushing you. Like large animal vets have so many more risks, and we don't have enough of them, and they're underappreciated, and they typically, I think they get treated shittier than small animal vets do, because with horse people there's more entitlement and belief in like being able to bully people into doing whatever they want with your horses. And yeah, so they're fucking awesome, but I just don't foresee how you could go through that intensive of a program and have that many things going on and moving around that much. And I also think that the code of ethics that they have to subscribe to would have a problem with how she conducts herself online, just to be fully transparent. Like I don't think that you would, like that would be heavily discouraged if you're speaking to people like that. Because like that's the other challenge with being a vet, right? Like I like, for me, I don't think I could get through the school, because it would just be like it's first of all the expense of it. Like I never would have even considered going to vet school because I couldn't afford to. Um, but it was something that I was interested in doing because I am very curious, and I do like I'm fascinated about medical procedures and learning about how things work and like the behind the scenes. Like I think I'm too squeamish to be a vet, but like that also could have been solved at vet school, I guess. But anyways, point being that like I've had curiosities about doing that, and I couldn't afford to. And same thing, it's like I don't think that people necessarily consider the ethical dilemmas that vets face, because also it's like you're navigating client relationships where they are going to have things that aren't ideal. Like a great example is like this tethering case with the horse. Like as a vet, you can't like bully and slam someone for something like that. Like you have to work with them and gently try to guide them to the right decision and help them make the right choice and advise them in a way that is like diplomatic and nice, and also be willing to accept the fact that like not everyone's going to listen to you, and all you can do is the best that you can. And that is what the whole practice of that industry is surrounded by, because there is no world in which you're only going to have clients and patients who are fully listening to everything that you say and never have any ethical dilemmas. Like you're constantly running into ethical dilemmas and having to navigate a world where people aren't going to be doing things the way that you think that they should. And yeah, like yeah, people also are super mean to vets, with like when they choose to euthanize, like if their animal dies, because they'll be like, you should have been able to fix this problem. And like honestly, a lot of times when things go wrong, it's like there's cases where people haven't brought their animal in soon enough, and then they blame the vet for not being able to save the animal that they ultimately weren't proactive with. And like that's the sad part. And like even for me, like I appreciate my vets so much. Like I love them so much, but I don't envy their jobs because they have to deal with so much bullshit and their jobs are really hard. So I don't envy them at all, but I respect them immensely. And yeah, they have a very high rate of depression. And I think like out of any profession, they have like one of the highest suicide rates. And I think it's because of like the ethical dilemmas that you're put through, because you have to deal with animals that are technically being neglected a lot, but not neglected on the basis that like you'd be able to hold them legally accountable for. And like owners that aren't doing everything that they should be doing for their animals' health,
you have to like, and then also like, then that's not without even like tapping into the fact that it's like, you also have to be there for like end of life moments for animals that have been your clients for years. And like have that just be like your day. Like when George died, my vet, like she hadn't been working on him that long because unfortunately he died so quickly that we didn't have him for very long. But like it was an emergency call. So in the middle of her night, she's just like leaving her house to come euthanize my horse in a really sad situation. And then also having to like deal with the owner too, because you have to have compassion for the owner and being nice to them and knowing what to say there. And it's like a really difficult situation to navigate. So I have a lot of respect for them, but it's not an easy job. And I think it takes a very specific type of person to do it well, because you have to be able to have a really balanced and nuanced perspective on things, but you also have to be able to have like a moral backbone where it's like, there's certain things that you're like, you know what, like I am going to push back against this. But yeah, catios are fantastic. My cats love their catio. It's like their favorite thing. Lint practically lives out there. So, yeah. And also like, I find like a lot of cats that get bored inside, they don't have enough climbing areas. They don't have enough enrichment, and they don't have like places to like look at birds and shit. And they don't have enough toys. And usually like it's an issue of like their area not providing enough enrichment, not the fact that they like need to go outside. With that said, like Queso does really like going outside. And he goes out on a leash, and like to the point where like he knows what outside means now. So when I ask my dog like, do you want to go outside, he comes fucking running too. And he will, yeah, he needs to go out more, but like I want to wait until I have more land and places to go where we're not surrounded by dogs, because like all of the parks here are so dog heavy, and like a lot of people have poorly behaved off leash dogs, and like I'm terrified of having someone's shitty ass dog come and fuck with my cat. So we're probably going to try to make it happen when we live more rurally, and do that, because yeah, like it's stressful. Like I really am looking forward to getting out of the city, and hopefully we'll be able to do that soon. So manifestation, guys. Yeah, apartment and strata laws suck. That's a bummer about the catio. But yeah. And like I'm probably just gonna try to build my own catio when I move, because like the one here, I'll try to get better video of it eventually. But if you look at the construction of it, it's not like particularly difficult to build. And like it probably wouldn't cost very much, especially if you went on like Facebook Marketplace and sourced the products yourself. Like I guess the most expensive thing would be is if you don't have the tools to like cut the wood and stuff, then you'd have to like either borrow them or buy them. But like they're pretty easy to make. And I think that they're totally worth it, because like yeah, my cats love it, and it's honestly not that big of an area. Like if I built my own, I would probably make it a little bit bigger, and I'd add more shelves for like vertical space. But like they enjoy it enough that it's great, and then they have like their 2 cat trees out there, and yeah, it's nice because they like looking at birds, and Lint likes like slapping shit underneath the, like he sticks his little arms underneath the wire, and then slaps stuff underneath and then grabs it, and then they can sit inside the window and like watch for birds, and then burst through the cat door like the Kool-Aid man and pretend to attack birds. And one time Lint even caught a mouse out there somehow, and he was like fucking tossing it around and like being insane. So they really liked it. But yeah, anyways, this is, yeah, I think that like we're hiring on this place will be confirmed. Honestly, I think that like everyone is deserving of animals, but it's knowing like what you can do to provide for them, and just doing what you can. But also it's like if you're in a temporary situation, like doing what you can to better the situation that you're in. And
I like some of my cat shelves that I got are just like wooden planks, and then you just buy little hangers to put them on, and they work really well. So it doesn't have to be expensive. But honestly, like Facebook Marketplace is my favorite thing because you can find really cheap stuff when people just need to get rid of it. So if you watch that closely enough, you can find really good shit. And sometimes people even give stuff away for free. And then you can just like build your own or like get more vertical space. Like I have a 7-foot cat tree that I got for $40 on Marketplace, which was pretty sweet because it probably cost them like several $100s, and it's like a really nice cat tree, and it wasn't very used when I got it. So 10 out of 10 recommend. Anyways, half of this live has just been about random stuff and shooting the shit. So if she sees this, how much do you want to bet she's gonna be like, Shelby made a fucking 2-hour live all about me, and half of it's about cats. So but that's not going to be seen because no nuance allowed, guys. Not gonna lie, sometimes I'd rather homeless people have dogs because so many rot in a cage at a shelter. I actually, that's a take that I agree with because like overwhelmingly so, they care for their pets the best, like better than they care for themselves. And they're usually quite like happy and like have like shiny, sleek coats. They have like beds to lay in. They are fed. Like you can tell that they're fed. They look healthy. They look happy. They're well socialized. Like I think it's a pretty elitist take to say that like homeless people shouldn't have pets because a lot of them are caring for their pets better than people who live in houses. Yeah. So, and like also like being at the shelter sucks. And I think that a lot of animals end up not getting adopted because they probably behave differently when they're locked into like that stressful of an area, and they're probably more likely to be reactive and stuff. So then people are going to see animals that aren't actually who they are going to be when they're relaxed. So it's really sad because then they get like left there because they can't be their best selves when they're under that amount of stress. And yeah, I only do outside on the leash just because I would really worried about like coyotes and eagles and stuff, and also my cat's like killing the shit out of birds because like they like to pretend to, and they for sure would because they're like pretty good at hunting. Yeah, I would not mind my tax money going towards providing vaccinations and spay and neuter to the dogs owned by homeless people because they are way happier when they can socialize. I would also go as far to say, like, I wouldn't mind my taxes going towards helping anyone who cannot afford to do those things be able to afford to do it. Like, kind of doing a universal healthcare type thing or some type of program that people can apply to, but for pets, and like treating pets as like dependents more so. Because like, quite frankly, like I don't give a fuck about like Galen Weston being a billionaire. Like he shouldn't be one. Let's use this money to make sure people have their needs met and to get animals homes, because fuck that guy. He's profiting off of hungry people. I truly don't give a shit about his ability to retain billions of dollars, and anyone that fucking dick rides billionaires, I don't respect you. Like I really, it's like licking the boot of someone who's about to stomp on you, and it's really silly. Also, why are homeless people's dogs always so well behaved? It's remarkable. It might be because they spend so much time together, and they get exposed to so much. Like if you like, they're meeting so many different dogs, different people, and they really can't be reactive in like, or they have to figure out how not to be in those situations because they're experiencing so much stimulation all the time. And yeah, like honestly, all of the dogs that I've seen owned by homeless people in like my area are like super well cared for. Like they're healthy, like they're rarely obese, and they're also like never too thin. And they are just like happy to be there, and they're friendly, and yeah, and they have like cool names, and they have cool stories, and you can tell how loved they are. And so yeah, anyone who says that like outright that like homeless people shouldn't have pets, I just don't fucking agree with that. I think that's a really elitist and privileged take to have, and it kind of goes in the same line as just like shitting on poor people. Hot take: spay and neuter should always be low cost or free, especially for people who can't afford 500 plus for these type of surgeries. I agree. There are like in farmy areas, there's more vet clinics that offer free spay and neuters because of the amount of like cats and like feral animals that there are. So they're easier to find in more rural areas, I feel like, because there's more programs to do that. But like I just think that there needs to be more things in place to help people who can't afford things, because I really don't subscribe to the idea that in a world where we're intentionally pricing people out who should have more than enough money to be able to afford to live, we're intentionally pricing them out of their capacity to live. I think that saying that people shouldn't own animals at all unless they are like fully 100% okay all the time is just like, most people couldn't have animals, because if you actually look at the reality of how many people are living paycheck to paycheck, it's like the majority of people at this point. So like as long as they're not like letting them suffer and they're not getting care, like it's like where there's a will there's a way. You find a way to get them treatment. And yeah, the no nut November thing, oh that's funny. Yeah, spay and neuter being free would hopefully stop a lot of people from just keeping their intact animals and letting them like run wild. Because yeah, I do judge people for not spaying and neutering like their pets, because it's like, why? um well, there are people, particularly vegan species and PETA, who advocate against having pets at all. So yeah, it's getting to the point for some people. Yeah, like I think that's like looking at things without nuance. Like I think that PETA is a great example of an organization that lacks the capacity to have nuance. And that's also why like I haven't really commented on like veganism and that mindset, because I have a lot of people that just like assume that like I'm fully immersed in that crowd. And like I don't agree with the extremism there either, because from my perspective is I agree with all of their concerns about factory farming, and I think that factory farming is bad and that's like a symptom of capitalism and that needs to fucking fall. However, I'm not going to shit on people who are like raising their own animals and like regular community farmers that aren't like that are just producing what they need and like small scale, because if you go to those farms and see how their animals are cared for, they're cared for pretty well. And like the thing that I have a hard time with, that I feel like it would be hypocritical to take this stance, especially like the horse people that I see taking this, a lot of them are very anti-factory farming. But one thing, and I was going to do a video on this at some point, this is not defending factory farming, it's just to give context. If you look at how the average beef cow lives and compare it to the average competition horse, or honestly just the average horse in North America, they have more of their needs met on a regular basis. So that's like something that sticks with me, where it's like, yes, they don't live as long because they're being used for food, but they are living a pretty damn good life until they are used for food, when we're talking about like range raised, grass raised meat. And like horses don't have those needs met. And I've like even looked at this with dairy cattle, because I had a pretty unique opportunity recently, because my friend is like she's getting her master's in animal sciences, or she has it now, she finished it in December, but they work with cows, like dairy cows. So I got to go to like the BC dairy place, like at the UBC area, and see what they were doing. And there's a lot of shit that like I don't agree with, but one thing that struck me is I was like, it got me thinking, where I was like, horses are really like the only livestock animal that we've normalized keeping them separate and alone, because that like really doesn't happen in any other setting. And I don't like the fact that a lot of the areas that the cows are walking on are concrete. They have sand beds, but they're small. Like I don't like the pathway. I also asked, I was like, well, why do the calves have shavings and then they just randomly take them away once they're older? Like, why can't they always have shavings? I don't agree with that. But they're all out together and they get to socialize and they have more space to move around than a lot of horses do. So that was something that struck me, where I was like, the horse industry fails horses in a way that is worse than a lot of daily keeping practices, even for factory farmed animals. And that is something that we kind of need to answer to. And it's been something where I've been struggling to figure out how to make that into a video, because I don't want people to watch 3 seconds of it and then take it and run with the fact that they're like, oh, Shelby's defending factory farming, because that's not it. It's drawing a parallel to the fact that these animals aren't being kept, like they have more of their needs met on a regular basis when it comes to management than a lot of horses do. And I find that very interesting, because people often will nitpick those types of things and then defend practices in the horse industry that are more harmful. So yeah, it's just it's something that I've found to be odd. And it's odd how we know cows need friends, but don't think horses do. They can get just a goat at best. Yeah, I agree. Or also, it's like if you have like the space for one horse, generally speaking, you have enough space for two. So it's like if you don't want to buy another horse, you could offer the space up to someone else who has a horse and just like rent it out for self board. And then that's like a low cost, low expectation way to increase the amount of socialization for the horse without having to spend money on another animal. So that's also like, or even like people who just want to like retire a horse. Like if they want to do retirement board, you could get a horse that's like old and just needs to chill and do it that way. And also with boarding facilities, a lot of people be like, I live near the city, I have no options. My take on that now is just like if you're choosing to get a farm animal who needs space, like you should be prepared to drive a little further or not have a barn with an indoor arena or make sacrifices to ensure that the horse's needs are met. And like I'm not really on board with this idea of like, oh, my horse has to be stalled 24/7 because that's all that's available near me. Because usually if you look at the truth of the situation, it's like they could travel a little further, even if it would be like an hour one way to drive there, or they could find a place that doesn't have as nice of amenities for them to use. But there's like, it's prioritizing like the people's needs above the horses, and oftentimes that's what happens. Like it's very rare that there is a case where someone's like, I truly have absolutely no other options. It's just what they're willing to sacrifice. And I think that it's wrong to get an animal knowing that you have to deprive their needs all the time. But a lot of people do that. So yeah, anyways, I'm gonna sign off soon and go see hi to my horses and just see what's up. But yeah, it's like having a high energy dog in an apartment. Yeah, like, and like people can manage that if you're actually like walking them enough and interacting them with enough. But like the difference between a horse and a dog is like, even like the dog in an apartment has like probably 20 plus times the amount of space as a horse in a stall. It would be like keeping your high energy dog kenneled 24/7 would be like the comparative that I always use. And like that's just, it's no life for any animal to live like that. It's such an understimulating life, and like going to the barn for an hour and riding them for an hour doesn't cancel out the other 23 hours. And even if people are well intentioned, it's really selfish to do that because you're basically just banking on like, oh, they're happy to see me in the hour that I'm there. And then you leave, and then they're existing for another 23 hours in an unideal situation. And you don't have to bear witness to that. So it's easier to kind of tune it out and ignore it. But it's not fair to them. And like, again, I say that as someone who used to keep horses in circumstances that weren't okay. It does hit a point where it's like, you gotta make sure that you're actually meeting their needs, because there's not really any denying that it's not okay to keep a horse in a stall. There's so much research on it. The only denial that occurs is for the comfort of the people who don't want to change their horses' situations or feel like they can't. But usually you can. Usually there's other options available, even if they're not your favorite ones, like moving the horse further out and driving further, which is what I initially had to do before I moved out this way. And like even now it's like I want my horses in a different situation than what they are currently, because I've had more time to reflect on like what I want to provide for them, what needs they have, and like the amount of work that's involved with maintaining the type of area that I'm in, and like what I want to do. And like I know that I'm going to have to move for it, and it's going to be uprooting my whole life and moving further away from like family and friends to do so. And that's just like, it's a sacrifice that I ultimately have to make if I want to have the things that I have. But in the meantime, like their needs are met. They're just not met to the fullest extent that I would want them to be via my standards. But they have friends, they have freedom, they have forage, they have their needs met. But I would just like to be able to meet them even better. So that's the goal anyways. And but thank you guys for listening to this nuanced discussion that I'm sure is highly likely to be used to suggest that I was just going off and bitching for an hour, which is not the case. in the US, Canada is in the US buying a farm is expensive. In Canada, I understand housing and land are even more so. So best of luck for a future farm if you can do it. Yeah, right now I wouldn't even be looking at buying. I'd be looking at renting, but I'm just hoping that my situation is going to change really quickly with like my book and stuff. And I'm manifesting that and trying to make that happen. But yeah, again, it's like it's difficult because you need like the down payment for the house. And a lot of people, like 98% of first time home buyers in BC, have support from parents to buy houses because you need to. So a lot of it comes from privilege and capital and family capital. Yeah, it sucks. So I don't have any of that. So I'm just trying to fucking make it happen to do what I can and do my own little part. And I don't want to like sell out and do content like drama content and shit to do that. I don't want to like do shitty things to horses to do that. So it's been a more difficult path because it's definitely more profitable to like train horses for competition and to like maintain those parameters. And but like it fucking tanks my mental health to do it. So anyways, have a good day, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. And I talked a lot about cats today and other things. So that was fun. See you later, alligators.